Hello and welcome to lecture 15 of the HRD course. Today we're going to have a shorter lecture than usual. I'm going to cover one of my papers on multisectoral approach to nutrition in Pakistan that was published in 2009 in Journal of Water, Sanitation and Hygiene for Development. The context has been already set for this paper in our last two lectures, where we discussed World Bank report on water and sanitation, poverty and health in Pakistan. That report focused on child health and wash access and poverty. And some of the students, because I assigned an assignment on something like this, and some of the students were still confused about how sanitation and water is connected to human resource development. So in this paper, I hope that the concept will be clarified a little bit more. The idea is that sanitation, water access indirectly affects human resource development because of the health impacts. We are talking about under 5 children here, but this is not limited to under 5 children. Plus, when we talk about under 5 children, these children are the labor force for future. And if our children are stunted, if they are not well developed cognitively as well as physically, they will not be the best ideal type of labor force that we are looking for in future. So we need to fix the health systems for them, education systems as well. So that's why, so that in future we'll have capable labor force that is useful for our innovation system, research and development, engineering. We need good quality people in engineering, health, and all economic sectors. So when we have a large population, and if everyone is healthy, if everyone is highly capable, then economy will boost, right? So this is why it's very important to focus on child's health, of course in addition to adults' health as well, but child health is important because this is your labor force for tomorrow. Okay, so in this paper I have used Emmanuel Escofias's framework. I will discuss it later on. In one of the undergrad presentations that we had a few days ago, last week, you might have seen UNICEF 1990 framework, and this paper is built upon that. I will explain it as we go along, and it will be easy to understand, hopefully. So the context is that Pakistan did not meet the Millennium Development Goal target in reducing malnutrition by half. Despite it fell short significantly. The malnutrition has decreased recently, but up till then, I used data until 2015. In recent years, at that point, malnutrition had increased, undernutrition had increased. So, but the problem is how to handle that. What are the reasons? That is the motivation behind this paper. What are the reasons why Pakistan is doing so poorly in reducing malnutrition? So we know we have briefly touched upon this definition of stunting in our previous lectures as well, but just to revise, stunting is known as the long-term consequence for human welfare. In addition to the cognitive and economic productivity effects, stunting also has long-term effects on schooling and maternal reproduction. So for female students, if they have poor health, and if the mother is stunted, the child is also likely to be stunted. So we have to take care of the children today so that they can become better mothers tomorrow and better workers also in the labor force. This is why this becomes very, very important to study this topic. And uh, we all know that undernutrition, with the title nutrition, we immediately connected with food intake. So primary cause for malnutrition is inadequate dietary intake. However, research has shown that targeting food security alone is not enough, which means that just by giving more food to the children, their undernutrition might not be cured. Framework goes beyond the unidirectional nutritional model, which concentrates on food security. It talks about synergies in different sectors that could be very, very important. Synergy means that the sum is more than its parts. So when you give somebody food and health, the outcome would be much better than just giving them adding the food component and health component. So synergy would mean that the benefits are more than the sum of the parts. So Scofie has quantified the UNICEF 1990 framework through a regression framework, which is what I have used in this analysis, and the correlation between stunting and three underlying determinants as well as their synergies, Scofie has studied in his paper. And this is the motivation for doing this paper. And the definitions of the different indicators that we use will come next, and you'll understand how we have calculated this model and how the variables were defined. The biggest challenge with quantifying a theoretical approach like this one is to measure the theoretical constructs in nutrition. For example, what is good environment? What is good care? So how do we measure good care? Unless we have a survey that is conducted just for the sake of doing this analysis, it's very difficult to do this kind of analysis with secondary data that is already available. So despite some caveats, we did find some interesting insights in this paper, so this is why I'm covering this today. Okay, so these are some sets of figures that give you a highlight of the situation in Pakistan. So stunting in rural areas is higher than urban areas. This is older now. Okay, so we have 2017-18 DHS now. So numbers are different, but this is older paper, so you can update it if you want to pursue this further. And stunting in children 0 to 59 months. So this is by wealth quintile. These are the poorest. These are the richest people, and stunting is going down. But you can see that this is 27%. 27% of children in the highest quintile are stunted. It means that 1 in 4 children in the richest community in Pakistan are likely to have stunted children. So the problem is huge. Even though you see that this is declining, it's trivial, but this is not zero or very low number. It's not a low number at all. If this was something like 2-3%, that would be like, okay, some outliers, but 27% is big, right? So this is a big problem, and it has to be addressed, right? So this is the UNICEF framework, okay? And what it does is that this is the long-term consequences, adult height, stunting and everything is right here. Okay, and these are the causes. So this is a bottom-up diagram. We are moving from here to here. What are the causes of inadequate? What are the causes of malnutrition? Okay, let me zoom in. I hope that you can see it now. So the first set of boxes are basic causes. So basic causes include political context, economic context, socio-cultural context. These are the things that we could not consider in this analysis because of lack of data. Inadequate financial, human, physical and social capital, that entails whether we have financial resources, we have good quality human capital, with whether we have qualified doctors, qualified teachers, and etc. That would come under basic causes. And then basic causes also include households' access to adequate quantity and quality of resources. As we discussed before as well, quantity, like having access to 24/7 water, is good, but having good quality water is ideal. So we want good quality water in addition to good quantity. Quantity comes first, but it's not sufficient. It should be of good quality as well. And that applies to care, to health, to food, and also to environment. Household access to land, education, employment, income, and technology. So if you have an approach in which household access is improved in all these aspects, the nutrition is likely to be improved. But these are basic causes. What are the underlying causes? These are the underlying causes. Let me zoom in a little bit more. These are the underlying causes, and that includes household food insecurity, inadequate care and feeding practices, unhealthy household environment, and inadequate health services. So our analysis regression framework is concentrating on these 6 boxes. The ones in dark orange color are immediate causes. So the basic causes are actually behind underlying causes, and underlying causes are behind immediate causes. And after immediate causes, they directly affect the children and mothers to have serious undernutrition effects. So we include food security, we include inadequate care, unhealthy household environment, and inadequate health services in the analysis. So if we don't have food security, it means that we have inadequate diet intake. If we don't have good quality household environment, we get diseases. Bad access to health services also leads to prolonged diseases, and this is how children's health is affected in the short run. Short-term mortality, morbidity, and disability are caused. In the long run, adult height, cognitive ability, economic productivity, reproductive performance, overweight, obesity. So when we talk, there is a difference between undernutrition and malnutrition. Undernutrition means stunting, wasting, and underweight. So meaning lower than ideal. Okay, undernutrition, lower than ideal nutrition. But malnutrition also includes over ideal, food. In terms of food intake, having more food than ideal is also bad. That is overweight and obesity. And when we combine the ones who are getting less nutrition and are getting more than ideal nutrition, these are called malnutrition. And if we only consider the ones who are having less than ideal nutrition, they are called undernutrition. So in this study, we don't consider overweight and obesity. So even though you see malnutrition at many places in this article, what we mean is undernutrition, because we are only considering stunting here. We are not even wasting in underweight, because we wanted to simplify the analysis. One of the tips here is, if you want to submit a paper in this field in a journal, keep it simple. So higher the number of regressions, more difficult it is to summarize everything in one coherent piece. Okay. So this is why we stuck to the stunting and try to develop a story from there. So for access to food, the ideal variable would be food security, but since we use DHS, Pakistan Demographic Health Survey, we do not have access to food security data in that data set. So instead we used inadequate dietary intake. I will explain that later on, how we calculate that. It's having 4 out of 7 groups of diets recently. So if a child had 4 out of 7 groups of foods, and then the child is considered to have adequate access to food. Second dimension is measure of adequate care. Uh, it includes knowledge practices. This is the definition of it. I'm not saying that this we included. This is the definition, the ideal definition. Knowledge practices, beliefs regarding childcare, health and nutritional status, mental health, stress level of the caregiver, child's caregiver. Okay. Self-confidence, autonomy, control of resources, workload and time constraints, social support received from family and community. So this is ideal for care. Third one is the component adequate environment, and we take wash access as the component for adequate environment. In this dimension, we consider children's exposure to pathogens in physical environment where they live, and we use improved drinking water, improved sanitation, and adequate hand washing facility in this framework. And the fourth dimension is adequate health care, and we measure it by different indicators that indicate whether the mother and the children had access to basic health care in the community or in the household. So this is the important part here, where we calculate where we develop the model. Okay, so this might look a bit scary, but it's very simple. Let me zoom it in. So forget about this part right here, just focus on this part. So instead of having stunting as the dependent variable, we had height for age z-scores. So the stunting variable is calculated using height for age z-scores. So we calculate the height for age for each child, and then we compare it with the ideal ones. And if the child is less than 2 standard deviation, meaning too far away from the ideal, we call this child stunted, and our variable will take the value of 1. If the child is not too far away, we give them a value of 0, meaning not stunted. Okay, so 0, 1 could be the categorization for stunted and non-stunted. But in the problem with this kind of categorization is that we lose a lot of information. We do not know if the child was too close to standard deviation or was too far away from to standard deviation. Even if the child was -3, -4 standard deviation, he would still be considered 1. If the child was like -2.1, he would also be considered 1. So the child who is -2.1 standard deviation away from ideal is definitely better than the one who is -4 standard deviation away from the ideal. But by categorizing ones and zeros, we kind of lose this information because everybody is considered 1 stunted. Okay, so this is why instead of using 0, 1 categorization, we simply used height for age z-scores as our dependent variable, and we use simple OLS. Okay. What are these variables on the right hand side? F stands for food, adequate in food. C is adequate in care, meaning child is getting adequate care. E is adequate in environment, meaning child is having adequate wash access. And H is adequate health. Okay, so these are the individual variables for food, care, environment and health. These are the interactions. So these are two-way interactions where these are the children who have both adequate food as well as adequate care. These are the children who have both adequate food as well as adequate environment, and so on. We have up till here the two-way interactions. Now we have three-way interactions. 1, 2, 3. These are three-way interactions. Giving example of this one, these are the children who have adequate food as well as adequate care and health. And similar kind of interpretation goes for these two as well. And the last one, the four-way interaction, is the one where these are the children who have adequate food, care, environment, as well as health. So these are the best of the lot, who have access to everything. Okay, so this is how we measure if multisectoral approach is important, because these are the individual improvements. If a child is only if a child has food, for example, and now also one thing also I want to mention here is that this kind of econometric equation can be done in two ways. One is the exclusive categories, and the other one is non-exclusive. Exclusive means that a child who only has access to food would be considered here, not the other three. So, okay, so the child who has access to care would be one in this category, and this child would must not have access to the other three dimensions. So this is how we consider exclusive categories. Okay, so the ones who are here, it means that they have access to only good food. Care, environment, and health is not covered in here. Okay, and here, for example, these are the ones who have food and care both. Okay, so these are the ones who are here will not be here, because these are the only ones. These are the ones with only good food. They do not have good care. Here, these children have both good food as well as care. These children are different from the ones here. So these are exclusive categories: only food, only care, only environment, only health. These ones, for example, have health, not good food, not good environment, and not good care. Only health. And wherever health is appearing, these children will not be covered in these ones, because they, in this category, they are only good in health. Here we are seeing that they are good in health as well as environment. So these children are different from these children. So all of them are exclusive. They do not repeat in different categories. Okay, so the ones who are here will not be here. The ones who are here will not be here, for example. These are exclusive categories. The alternate way of doing it would be to have categories in which children can repeat. For example, the alternate definition could be if the child had food, good food or not, right? So good food could mean that, okay, child had good food, but it could or could not have good care. Non-exclusive category would mean that anybody who is here could also be here. For example, if a child is having food as well as care, also has food individually, so we could also have him here. So this child would be repeated here. Wherever food is appearing, this child will also appear there. Okay, could also appear there. Okay, so the children can repeat in these categories. The ones who are here, who have food, care, environment, and health, individually speaking, though they are also adequate in food, of course, we are saying that they are adequate in all four dimensions. So they also have good quality of food, so good access to food. So these children will also appear here. These children will also appear here, some of them. Okay, so in this one we are saying that access to food and care, we don't care if the child has good access to environment and health. Okay, so they may have or may not have, we don't care. Okay, so this is why these categories are not the same, but children will repeat in them. So these are non-exclusive categories. So I thought this is important, that's why I shared with you. Zooming out, for food we have these 7 types of food available in the DHS. First is grains, roots, and tubers. Second one is legumes and nuts, dairy products, flesh foods including organ meats, eggs, vitamin A, rich fruits, vegetables, including orange and yellow vegetables, and other fruits. These are the 7 categories. And what we want is, we want to have uh, a child who has at least 4 out of these 7 categories. So if the child has at least 4 of them, then we consider them to be adequate in food. And we also change this definition for different age groups. For example, the ones who are under 6 months old, exclusive breastfeeding is sufficient to consider them adequate in food. The ones who are older than that, then we include some kind of solid foods as well. So all these details are not very important, but still I want to mention the definition, so that if you are interested, you can try this out yourself as well. For adequacy in care, we have 2 different types of components. One is child specific, the other one is mother specific. For child specific variable, we have initiation of breastfeeding at the appropriate time. And for mother related indicators, we have literacy status and empowerment. By empowerment, we mean that the mother has the ability to make her own health related decisions jointly or alone. So she has a say in the household when it comes to the health related decisions. This is why we use it as the proxy for adequate health. Empowerment. So these are the indicators that we show here. Exclusive breastfeeding is 37% in Pakistan. 13% have adequate diet diversity. 4 out of 7 groups that we mentioned before. Meal frequency is 45% adequate meal frequency, and these are the different types of foods that are consumed. So the highest one is the blue one, which is starch. And the lowest one is, which one is it? Legumes, 6%. Early breastfeeding is 35%, and complementary feeding is the highest, 60%. And empowerment is 49%, meaning 49% of the women in Pakistan either alone or jointly take decision regarding their health. 51% do not, which is troubling. 39% can read or write. So these 2 indicators combined with initiation of breastfeeding are considered as the measure for adequate care. Environment, I'm not going to discuss the definitions in detail, because we have already done that in lecture 13 and 14. What we are measuring here is that the household where the child is living has access to improved water, improved sanitation, and hand washing facility with soap and water. If all these categories are okay, then we consider this child to be, or the household of the child to be okay in access to environment. All right, and adequacy in health means that the child has access to, or mother of the child has access to, health services. And we measure this by prenatal services, the access to prenatal services. We consider mother to be have access to adequate care when at least 4 visits were made to prenatal checkups. Immunization status was adequate as per the WHO requirements. This data is very nicely available in DHS, so it was very easy to do that. The vaccinations covered are mentioned here: BCG, DPT, measles, and others. And we also allow for a 3-month leeway, meaning that if the child had to have vaccination today, but for some reason it was delayed, so we allow them for 3 months to complete this vaccination. So we not becoming too much strict that if this was due today, it has to be done today. We give them 3 months to do that. So it makes it a little more relaxed and realistic. Okay, and so 38% of the women had prenatal visits. 98% had assisted births, postnatal checkups were 51%, and vaccinations were adequate for 51% of the children. And we had two different definitions because all this analysis depends on the definitions. How you define adequate wash, health, and care, of course, we have seen that. So adequate food is very simple, so we have kept it the same in two definitions. What we have changed is that in definition 1, adequate care included contact with mother's breast within 1 hour after birth. That was equal to 1. We considered that in definition 2 but not in 1. Similarly, we did not consider hand washing facility in definition 1. The reason is that hand washing facility is not available for everybody. So to make it a little more relaxed, the definition 1 is a little bit more relaxed. The definition 2 is slightly more stringent. So we have played around with two definitions to see if anything changes. These are the results, and these are the percentages of child groupings. It shows that 30% in definition 1, 30% of the children have adequate, none of the things were adequate for them. Only 19% of the children were adequate in environment only, and it's mentioned only because these are exclusive categories, as I explained before. All of this combined is equal to 100%. So if the children were repeating, that would not be 100%. That would be significantly more than 100%, because children who are adequate in food would be appearing in food and health only, for example, as well, and other categories as well. So there are some differences in definitions. Definition 2 is more stringent, as I said before. This is why 9% more children have adequacy in none. Some of the children move from some of the sectors like here to this one. This is why the number is smaller. Only 2% of the children were adequate in both food, inadequate in all four dimensions, sorry. It's in rural areas, this is 1% for all four categories in both definitions. In urban areas, this is 3% and 4%. So these are very small numbers, and it's alarming because these definitions are not really strict. It's still, we are seeing that 49%, 48% of the rural children are not adequate in anything. So that's something very alarming. So these are regressions, correlations using OLS. As I said, as I mentioned, this is exclusive, and it shows that the children who are adequate in food, they are likely to be taller than the ones who are not. So this constant is telling us that the children who are not adequate in anything, they are likely to be shorter. See that this is negative sign, and because when everything is 0, then it's a constant. We know this from econometrics 101, right? So if everything is 0, the ones that are left are in the category who are adequate in none of them. So this is where the constant comes into play. R squared is low, and because we did not include control variables here. This analysis can be improved by including control variables, but there are multicollinearity problems with doing that. So this is why we kept it simple. There is a lot of room for improvement, definitely. So adequate care was insignificant, meaning that the way we define it, it doesn't mean that care is not important. It means that the way we define it, it does not have an impact on child height. It is quite possible that when we exclude everything else, this will become significant. But since all these dimensions are so much related to each other, it also means that if a child is good in food, it means that the mother is taking care of him or her. This is why the component of care is already captured by food. So this is what happens in econometrics when we don't have omitted variable bias. The true impact is taken by some of the variables, and the other variables lose significance. It means that this variable alone is not important, but combined with food it might be important. And this is what we see here as well. So food and care combined is significant and positive, meaning that these children are higher. In terms of magnitude, you can see that the health component is very, very strong. The children who have access to health are taller, definitely taller, and combine that with care, it becomes even more stronger. Now you can argue that why this is 1.5, why this is 1.2. Since our sample size is not really large, it's something like 900 individuals. With very large sample sizes, we can compare magnitudes, but here I don't want to compare 1.2 with 1.3, for example. The difference is not really huge, but 1.2 can be compared with 0.27 insignificant variable, right? So what I want you to focus on is the sign of the variable and significance. Coefficients, the magnitude of the coefficients might be differ. And the ones who are adequate in all four also have high significance and a positive sign, meaning that if your child is adequate in all four dimensions, he is likely to be taller. So it does have an impact on the child's height. So rest is the explanation of all that. You can read this paper as well to get more insights. The idea is that to improve child's height, to reduce stunting, the interventions should not be focused on one of the dimensions. We need multisectoral improvement. We need multisectoral approach to tackle stunting. So that is the point behind this study. So you can see that individual components are insignificant. Even though they are insignificant, they are significant when they are combined with other sectors. Food and care combined has significant impact. Care alone does not have. So food and environment combined has 1.3. Environment alone is insignificant. So you can see this, as I was saying, synergies mean that the outcome is greater than the sum of its parts. Food alone is 0.588. I know that I just mentioned a few minutes ago that you should not look into the coefficients, but some of them are interesting. So that's why I'm explaining. 0.58 significant, 0.318 insignificant, meaning this is 0, right? So 0.588 combined with 0 is 1.3, right? So the joint impact is greater than the sum of its parts. 0.588 plus 0 is 1.3, right? It's not 1.3. 1.3 is much greater than the sum of the parts. So this is then an indication of synergies. And I extended this analysis, which was recently published in Journal of Public Health. It was very similar analysis, but with non-exclusive categories. So the categories were non-exclusive, meaning that the children who were here could also be here. And we did find some synergies, but those were related to environment, meaning wash access. So this is why wash access is very, very important. Not only it shows some kind of synergy here, it also shows when we have non-exclusive categories. Okay, so I'll conclude this lecture here. The last lecture will be uploaded next week, and I will announce it on the MS Teams as well as the WhatsApp group. So if you guys have not submitted your assignment number 3, I know that there are some connectivity issues. You can still do that. And today is May 13th, so I think the deadline was yesterday night, but I'm going to accept it even if you submit it tomorrow night. Okay, so take care. Thank you for watching and listening. See you with another video next week. Bye bye.